Disclaimer: this story is a work of creative nonfiction based on real emotional experiences. Names, identifying details, and certain events may have been altered to protect the privacy of the individuals involved. It is intended for mature audiences due to its themes of infidelity, emotional betrayal, and family conflict. Reader discretion is advised. It was just another ordinary Tuesday evening, or so I thought. I had wrapped up a long shift at work, mentally drained but looking forward to some peace at home. As I pulled into the driveway, the soft glow from the living room told me everyone was home, and I smiled. My 7-year-old son, Ryan, always ran to greet me, arms wide open, bubbling with stories from school. But today, there was no running, no laughter echoing from the hallway. It was quiet. Maybe he's just tired, I mumbled to myself, setting down my bag by the door. My wife, Elena, stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove. She smiled faintly and said, "Hey, you're back early." It struck me as odd. It was the usual time I returned. But I let it go, blaming it on fatigue. "Where's Ryan?" I asked casually, loosening my tie. "In his room, playing," she said, not meeting my eyes. I made my way toward his room, eager to give him a hug before dinner. As I reached for the doorknob, I paused. There was a sound, faint shuffling, almost like someone trying to move quietly. Then, a muffled whisper. Ryan never whispered while playing. He was loud, imaginative, and full of life. My instincts tingled. I slowly turned the knob and pushed the door open. What I saw in that moment will stay with me forever. There, standing awkwardly near the window, was a grown man. Not Ryan. A man I had never seen before in my life. His face turned pale the second our eyes met. My entire body froze, heart thudding violently, like it was trying to punch its way out of my chest. "Who the hell are you?" I asked, my voice a mix of fear and rising anger. The man didn't answer. He glanced around nervously, like a trapped animal, then brushed past me in a hurry, mumbling, "Sorry," under his breath before fleeing down the hall. I heard the front door slam. My hands trembled. I looked around the room. It was empty. Ryan wasn't there. "Elena," I called, storming back to the kitchen. She turned, eyes wide, her face now completely drained of color. "What's wrong?" There was a man in Ryan's room. Who was he? Her lips parted but no words came out. I could see something break in her expression, a crack in the carefully constructed mask she wore. She looked cornered. Terrified. Guilty. The silence between us screamed louder than words ever could. I didn't know what was happening yet, but I knew one thing for sure: something in our home had changed forever. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. That stranger, standing in my son's room like he belonged there. Like he had every right to be inside our home. I kept asking myself the same question over and over: who was he? And why was he in Ryan's room of all places? Elena hadn't answered me. After the man ran out, I had demanded an explanation. She stuttered, said she had no idea who he was, maybe a delivery guy who got lost, maybe a friend of a neighbor's kid. The excuses were shallow. They didn't stick. Her voice shook when she said them, her hands twitching as she held a kitchen towel too tightly. I didn't believe a word of it. I barely spoke to her the rest of the evening. Ryan came out of the bathroom eventually, sleepy-eyed, asking where Mommy was. I tucked him into bed and kissed his forehead like nothing was wrong, even though my world was quietly crumbling around me. The next morning, I waited until she was getting ready for work. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Elena," I said. "We need to talk about last night." She paused, curling iron in her hand. "I told you, I don't know who he was." "You're lying." My voice was cold. "You looked at him like you knew him. He looked at you the same way." "I want the truth." She dropped the curling iron onto the counter. I watched her shoulders tense up as she turned toward me. You think I'm cheating on you? She snapped. I don't know what to think, I replied. But I know what I saw. And I know you're hiding something. For a moment, I thought she would confess. Her eyes welled up with tears, and I saw her lips begin to tremble. But instead of speaking, she turned away and said, You're being paranoid. I've never done anything to deserve this. I left the room. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Her words, her timing, her body language, it all felt too rehearsed. Too defensive. Something was going on, and she didn't want to admit it. That afternoon, while she was at work, I stood outside Ryan's room again. I walked inside slowly, trying to make sense of the scene. His toys were untouched. His bed made. The window slightly open. It wasn't a coincidence. That man was there for a reason. And I had a sick feeling that reason had something to do with Elena. As I stood in the silence, a thought occurred to me. What if this wasn't the first time he'd been here? What if Ryan had seen him before? What if Elena had been using our own home for something she thought I'd never discover? The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The distance in her eyes lately. The random phone calls she'd take in the garage. The sudden errands at odd hours. The stranger might have been a mistake, an unplanned meeting. But it opened the door to something far worse, betrayal. And I was just beginning to realize how deep it might go. The days that followed were a blur of suspicion and distance. Elena continued to act like everything was normal, but she had grown quieter. Colder. She no longer reached for my hand when we passed each other in the hallway. Our conversations had shrunk down to necessities: dinner, Ryan's school schedule, errands. The warmth that once lived in our home had been replaced with a kind of quiet tension, like something unspoken was constantly in the air, waiting to explode. But I wasn't letting this go. Not this time. The memory of that man's face wouldn't leave me. His startled expression when I walked in. The way he bolted, not confused, but caught. He wasn't lost. He didn't stumble into the wrong room. He had been waiting for something. Or someone. The only person that made sense was Elena. I decided to test her. One evening, as we sat across from each other at the dinner table with Ryan quietly eating between us, I asked casually, Do you know anyone named Mark? Her fork froze midair. Mark, she repeated. Yeah, I said, watching her closely. The guy I saw. He kind of looked like a Mark. She laughed nervously. No. I don't think so. Her voice was shaky. Her hands trembled as she picked up her glass. I knew right then, I had struck a nerve. She was hiding something. And now, it had a name. After dinner, I put Ryan to bed and waited until Elena had fallen asleep. My heart pounded as I made the choice I had always sworn I wouldn't make in a marriage. I took her phone. It was locked, but I knew the passcode. She hadn't changed it, yet. I opened her messaging app, searching for Mark. Nothing. Then I checked WhatsApp. There he was. My breath caught in my throat. The conversations were tucked away under a fake name, Claire. But when I opened the thread, it was him. The man from Ryan's room. Shirtless selfies, flirty emojis, voice notes that sent chills down my spine. And the worst part? There were messages that referenced our house. The hallway. The times I would be away. Wish I could sneak in again tonight. Same room? Keep the window open. I felt sick. My hands shook as I scrolled further, past messages where she told him she didn't love me anymore, that she felt trapped, that being with him made her feel alive. A woman I thought I knew, someone I shared a life, a child, a home with, had been lying to my face for God knows how long. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't breathe. I took screenshots. I needed to confront her. But not yet. I needed time to process. To plan what came next. Exploding with anger wouldn't fix this. And I couldn't afford to fall apart, not for Ryan's sake. That night, I lay in bed beside her, listening to her steady breathing, while my world silently cracked in half. I had the truth now. And soon, so would she. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just lay there, motionless, staring at the ceiling as Elena breathed peacefully beside me, unaware that her secret was now sitting like fire in my chest. The betrayal was no longer a vague suspicion. It had a name, a face, and a history. My marriage wasn't cracked. It was shattered. The next morning, I got up before anyone else. I sat in the kitchen, phone in hand, looking at the screenshots I had taken, the messages, the photos, the time stamps. Some of them went back over a year. My hands clenched the phone so tightly I thought I might crush it. Every memory from that past year now had a question mark. Business trips. Girls' nights out. Just taking Ryan to the park moments. I couldn't stop asking myself, how many of those times was she really with him? I didn't know what to do. Yelling wouldn't help. Accusing her right now might end with more lies. I needed more than just angry words, I needed the full picture. So, I went digging. That day, while she was at work and Ryan was at school, I searched through her laptop. It was synced with her phone, I'd helped her set it up myself. And what I found on it made my stomach turn. Emails. Hundreds of them. Many from Claire, which I now knew was the alias for Mark. Some were flirtatious, others outright graphic. But worse than that, there were plans. Hotel bookings under fake names. Instructions on how to get into the house through the backyard when I was working late. At one point, she even sent him a photo of Ryan's weekly schedule, so they'd know exactly when the house would be empty. It wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal on a level I couldn't comprehend. She brought him into our son's world. Into his room. Into the sacred space where a child should feel safe and protected. I sat there, shaking. At one point, I realized I had tears running down my face, silent, bitter tears. Not just from pain, but from the sheer humiliation. She didn't just cheat on me. She disrespected everything we built together. And I had been blind to it for far too long. I backed everything up. Every email. Every photo. Every piece of proof. I wasn't sure yet if I wanted a divorce. The idea of breaking our family apart tore at me. But I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. That night, I barely spoke to her. She noticed. "Are you okay?" she asked over dinner. I nodded. "Just tired." She looked at me for a moment longer than usual, like she was trying to read my mind. But I didn't give her anything. Not yet. I needed one more piece of clarity. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. But for Ryan. I needed to understand how far this had gone, before I decided what to do next. The following evening, I made my decision. I asked Elena to sit with me after putting Ryan to bed. The house was quiet. Only the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the wood floor broke the silence. She looked hesitant, as if she already knew what was coming. "I need to ask you something," I began, my voice calm but steady. "And I want you to be honest with me." She nodded, folding her hands in her lap. "Okay. Who is Mark?" She froze, not a single twitch in her expression, not even a blink. But I saw the blood drain from her face. That name hit like a bullet. I saw the messages, I continued. The emails. The hotel bookings. The conversations about our son's schedule, about sneaking into our house. She said nothing. Her mouth opened slightly, but there were no words. "Elena," I said, leaning forward. "I know everything." She looked away. I waited. The silence felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to fall. And then finally, in a broken whisper, she said, "I didn't mean for it to go that far." There it was. The truth. The admission. And with it, something inside me fractured permanently. "You didn't mean for it to go that far?" I repeated, my voice cracking. You brought him here. Into Ryan's room. Into our life. You gave him access to our child. Tears began to fill her eyes, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not this time. It was supposed to be just a distraction, she said. I felt alone. I felt like you weren't seeing me anymore. Like I was invisible. You don't get to justify this, I said. We could have talked. We could have worked on it. But instead, you turned to a stranger. You let him into our home. You lied to me. Over and over. 4 months. She sobbed into her hands, but it didn't move me. I had loved her. I had trusted her with my heart, my home, my son. And now everything felt poisoned. Tainted. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. But you did, I replied. You didn't just hurt me, Elena. You broke something I don't know how to fix. We sat in that space, a silence full of pain, regret, and finality. The weight of everything hung heavy in the air. The room that once held laughter and late-night talks now held the death of trust. I don't know what this means for us, I finally said. But I need space. I need time. And you need to think about what you've done, not just to me, but to Ryan. She nodded slowly, still crying. I walked out of the room, closed the door behind me, and sat alone in the hallway. For the first time since I found that man in my son's room, I allowed myself to cry, not just for the betrayal, but for the loss of the life I thought I had. In the days that followed, the house felt like a museum of memories. Everything looked the same on the surface. The couch still held the indent of where we used to cuddle on movie nights, Ryan's toys remained scattered on the living room floor, and the scent of Elena's shampoo still lingered in the bathroom. But something was irreversibly different. We had become strangers in the same home. I moved into the guest room. Elena and I barely spoke, except when necessary. But in the middle of this emotional wreckage, one person remained completely unaware of the storm brewing around him, Ryan. His innocence was like a light in a dark room. He still smiled the same way, still ran to me when I got home, still asked me to read him stories before bed. To him, nothing had changed. He didn't know that the very foundation of our family had cracked. And I didn't want him to. One afternoon, while I was helping him build a Lego spaceship, he asked something that hit me like a freight train. Daddy, is Mommy mad at you? I paused, Lego block in hand, and looked at his small, curious face. Why do you ask that, buddy? Because she cried in the bathroom. I heard her. And she doesn't laugh at your jokes anymore. I swallowed hard. How do you explain betrayal to a 7-year-old? How do you preserve a child's innocence when your own heart is bleeding? Mommy and I are just going through a hard time, I said gently. But we both love you very much. That will never change. He nodded, accepting that as enough. Then, like the beautiful, unburdened child he was, he went right back to playing. But that moment haunted me. Ryan noticed more than we gave him credit for. And if we weren't careful, this situation, this betrayal, would affect him in ways we couldn't predict. That night, I watched him sleep. I sat at the edge of his bed, brushing a hand through his soft hair. He looked so peaceful. So untouched by the mess adults create. And that's when it hit me, whatever I decided next, it had to be for him. Not for revenge. Not out of rage. But for Ryan's future, for his emotional stability, his safety, his ability to grow up in a home where trust wasn't just a word. I had already begun speaking to a counselor, someone to help me make sense of the chaos inside me. And I made an appointment for Elena and me as well. Whether we repaired the marriage or parted ways, we had to do it right. For our son. Because while I was drowning in betrayal, Ryan deserved to stay afloat. He was the only truly innocent one in all this. I sat across from Elena in the therapist's office, the quiet hum of a white noise machine filling the uncomfortable silence between us. The walls were a soft beige, the room neutral, no sides, no judgments. But the tension we carried in with us made it impossible to relax. We had agreed to come here for Ryan's sake. It had been a few weeks since the confrontation. I had kept my distance, both emotionally and physically, while still trying to maintain a routine for our son. But something had to give. I couldn't live in limbo anymore. I needed to make a decision, stay and try to rebuild something that felt irreparably broken, or leave and build something healthier from the ground up. The therapist was a middle-aged woman named Dr. Henson. Her voice was calm, but firm. "Elena," she said gently, "you've admitted to the affair. What do you want now?" Elena didn't answer right away. Her hands twisted in her lap. "I want to fix this," she said finally. "I know I've ruined things. I know I've hurt him. But I don't want our family to fall apart. I still love him." I didn't respond. I looked at her and tried to see the woman I had fallen in love with years ago, the woman who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen, who cried watching animal rescue videos, who once planned an entire surprise birthday party for me because she thought I deserved more attention. But all I could see now was the woman who had betrayed me in the most sacred space of our life, our home. Dr. Henson turned to me. "And what about you? What do you need in order to move forward?" I took a long breath. "I need honesty. I need safety. I need to know that I'm not waking up next to a stranger anymore. I need time to grieve, and decide if I can ever trust her again." Elena began to cry, softly at first. "I was lonely," she said. "I felt invisible. But I know that's not an excuse. I should have talked to you. I should have fought for us instead of giving up." I looked at her and, for the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine remorse. Not guilt because she was caught, but sorrow because she knew she had thrown away something precious. But remorse wasn't always enough. That night, after putting Ryan to bed, we sat in the living room. I turned off the TV and looked her in the eyes. "I can't forgive you." "Not yet," I said. "I don't know if I ever fully will. But for Ryan's sake, I want us to co-parent in a way that doesn't destroy him. Whether that means living under the same roof or separately. I don't know. But we need to start thinking long-term." She nodded slowly. "I'll do whatever it takes." "Then start with this," I said. "Tell him the truth, not the affair. But that we're working through things. That sometimes adults have to fix problems, and that no matter what happens, he is loved." It wasn't a decision made from emotion. It was made from necessity. Not for me. Not for Elena. But for the one person who mattered more than anyone else now, our son. It's been 6 months since that night I found a stranger in my son's room, the night that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and the woman I had loved for over a decade. In the time since, so much has changed. Elena and I made the mutual decision to separate. It wasn't done in anger, though there were nights it certainly felt easier to scream than to speak. It was done out of necessity, out of an acknowledgement that trust, once broken so completely, doesn't always come back, no matter how many apologies are whispered in the dark. We both agreed to put Ryan first. We meet with a co-parenting counselor every other week. We have a schedule that works. I keep him on the weekdays. She has him most weekends. We have dinner as a family every Sunday, not because it's easy, but because Ryan deserves to see two parents who still respect each other even when love has changed its shape. He's adjusting better than I expected. Children, it turns out, are far more resilient than adults. He asks fewer questions now, though every once in a while, I see it, that glimmer of confusion in his eyes. Like he knows something big shifted, but can't fully grasp it. I reassure him often. I tell him we both love him. That he's safe. That none of this is his fault. As for Elena and me, we talk, but only when it's about Ryan. There's still pain, but there's no more yelling. Just a quiet, mutual acceptance of where we are now. She's been seeing a therapist on her own. She tells me she's working through her guilt. I hope that's true. I haven't started dating. I'm not ready. maybe I won't be for a long time. My trust was burned in a very specific way, a kind of betrayal that still echoes in the quiet moments of my day. But I've started finding peace again. In the small things. Waking up to Ryan's sleepy face asking for pancakes. Reading bedtime stories in my old armchair. Going for walks in the park, just the two of us, where I let him talk about dinosaurs and superheroes and the things that still make his world feel simple and good. That's where healing begins, not in dramatic gestures, but in the stillness of love that remains after everything else is stripped away. I still carry the scars. I probably always will. But I'm learning not to let them define me. I walked into my son's room that night expecting a quiet bedtime, and instead uncovered a truth that would unravel my entire life. But in the end, it wasn't the betrayal that defined the story. It was what came after. It was the choice to fight for my son's stability. To choose peace over revenge. To take the pain, and build something better from it. This isn't the story of a perfect family. It's the story of how I lost one version of my life, and found the strength to build a new one. 24.